Sarah Chun learned to shoot before she learned to ride a bicycle. In the mountains of Montana, where her father ran a small hunting outfitter business, the crack of rifle fire was as common as morning coffee. By age 7, she could hit a tin can at 50 yards with her father's old .22. By 12, she was out shooting clients who paid good money for her father's guidance. Steady breath, steady aim, steady heart, her father would whisper as they crouched in the early morning frost. Marcus Chun had served 2 tours in Vietnam before settling into the quiet life of a hunting guide. His hands, scarred from shrapnel, would guide his daughter's small fingers along the rifle's stock. "The gun doesn't make the shot, Sarah. You do." The other kids in their small mountain town thought Sarah was weird. While they played video games and gossiped about celebrities, she spent weekends tracking elk through pine forests and learning to read wind patterns like other children read books. Her mother had died when Sarah was 4, leaving father and daughter to navigate their grief through shared silence in the wilderness. School was torture for Sarah. She sat through algebra and history classes, her mind wandering to ballistics calculations and trajectory arcs. Teachers complained she was distracted and asocial. They didn't understand that she was already solving problems far more complex than anything written on their blackboards. When other students struggled with basic geometry, Sarah instinctively understood how to compensate for bullet drop over distance. The transformation began during her sophomore year of high school. A retired Marine sergeant named Tom Rodriguez became the new ROTC instructor. He noticed Sarah immediately, not because she was the only girl in the program, but because she carried herself differently. While other students fumbled with basic drill movements, Sarah moved with the precision of someone who understood discipline. "You ever shot competitively, Chun?" Rodriguez asked after watching her disassemble and reassemble an M16 faster than students who'd been in the program for 2 years. "Just hunting, sir," Sarah replied. But something in her eyes told Rodriguez there was more to the story. He arranged for the ROTC unit to visit the local shooting range. Sarah had been reluctant to participate, knowing that her skills might draw unwanted attention. But when she stepped up to the firing line with the standard issue rifle, muscle memory took over. Her breathing slowed, her heartbeat steadied, and the world narrowed to nothing but the target downrange. 20 shots, 20 perfect bullseyes. The range fell silent except for the mechanical whir of the target retrieval system. Rodriguez stared at the paper target, then at Sarah, then back at the target. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen anything like it. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable with the attention. "My dad taught me. It's just hunting." But Rodriguez knew better. This wasn't hunting. This was something else entirely. That night, he called his old commanding officer, Colonel James Mitchell, who now worked at the Pentagon's Special Operations Recruitment Division. "Jim, I think I found something," Rodriguez said into the phone. "A kid with natural talent I've never seen before. Female, 17 years old, and she can put rounds on target like she was born doing it." Colonel Mitchell had heard similar claims before. Every year, recruiters called about their special discoveries. Most turned out to be decent shots who couldn't handle pressure or lacked the mental discipline for real military work. "Send me her scores, and I'll take a look," Mitchell said, more out of politeness than genuine interest. When the official range scores arrived 3 days later, Mitchell read them twice, convinced there had been a mistake. He called Rodriguez back immediately. "These scores are impossible for a 17-year-old civilian." "That's what I thought too," Rodriguez replied. "Until I watched her shoot." Mitchell arranged for an official military assessment team to evaluate Sarah. They arrived at her high school on a Thursday morning in an unmarked van, carrying testing equipment worth more than most people's houses. The team leader, Master Sergeant Frank Torres, had evaluated hundreds of potential snipers over his 20-year career. He approached the test with professional skepticism. They set up targets at progressively longer distances, 200 yards, 400 yards, 600 yards, 800 yards. Standard military rifles, various weather conditions, time pressure scenarios. Sarah moved through each station methodically, her father's training evident in every controlled breath and steady trigger pull. At 800 yards, shooting into a crosswind that was giving the assessment team's own marksman trouble, Sarah placed 5 consecutive shots within a 3-inch group. Master Sergeant Torres lowered his binoculars and looked at his scoring sheet for a long moment. "Ma'am," he said to Sarah, his voice carrying newfound respect, "have you ever considered a career in the military?" Sarah glanced toward her father, who had been watching from a distance. Marcus Chun nodded slowly. They had both known this day would come eventually. His daughter's gifts were too extraordinary to remain hidden in the Montana mountains forever. "I've thought about it," Sarah admitted. That evening, Colonel Mitchell's phone rang in his Pentagon office. Master Sergeant Torres was calling with preliminary results. "Sir, I've been doing this job for 2 decades," Torres began. "I've tested Olympic shooters, former Navy SEALs, Marine Scout snipers. This girl is operating on a different level entirely. She's not just accurate, she's intuitive. She's reading conditions and making adjustments that take most professional snipers years to develop." Mitchell leaned back in his chair. In the modern military, precision marksmen were worth their weight in gold. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan had proven that one well-placed shot could save dozens of lives and change the outcome of entire engagements. "What are you recommending, Sergeant Torres?" "Fast-track her through basic training and get her into advanced marksman programs as quickly as possible. With proper training, this kid could become one of the most effective snipers in military history." 6 months later, Sarah Chun graduated from high school with a 3.8 GPA and full military scholarship. Her classmates were heading to state colleges and entry-level jobs. Sarah was heading to Fort Benning, Georgia, for Army basic training, with a guaranteed slot in advanced infantry training upon completion. Her father drove her to the recruitment station on a gray March morning. They had spent the previous evening cleaning and packing her personal rifle, the same weapon she had learned on as a child, now customized with precision scope and modified trigger assembly. "Remember what I taught you," Marcus said as they stood outside the recruiting station. "Steady breath, steady aim, steady heart." Sarah nodded, shouldering her duffel bag. She had no idea that she was about to enter a system that would challenge everything she believed about her own capabilities. Basic training would be the easy part. The real test would come later, when she tried to prove that gender meant nothing when you could put bullets exactly where they needed to go. As the bus pulled away from the station, carrying Sarah toward her new life, her father remained in the parking lot until the vehicle disappeared around a bend in the road. He understood that he was losing his daughter to something bigger than both of them. But he also knew that the military was gaining something it had never seen before. What they would do with that gift remained to be seen. Fort Benning's reception station processed new recruits with mechanical efficiency. Sarah stood in line with 47 other fresh-faced civilians, waiting to trade their street clothes for military uniforms and their individual identities for serial numbers and rank structures. The drill sergeant who greeted their bus had perfected the art of intimidation through volume and creative profanity. "Welcome to the United States Army, ladies and gentlemen." Staff Sergeant Williams roared, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "For the next 14 weeks, your previous life doesn't exist. Your mommy doesn't exist. Your girlfriend doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is what I tell you exists." Sarah had expected the psychological pressure. Her father had warned her about military mind games designed to break down civilian thinking patterns. What she hadn't expected was the immediate assumption that she would struggle with physical demands simply because of her gender. During the initial fitness assessment, Drill Sergeant Martinez pulled Sarah aside. "Chun, you sure you want to be here? Infantry training isn't like regular army. This is combat arms. Real fighting. Maybe you'd be happier in communications or medical corps." Sarah looked the drill sergeant in the eye. "Respectfully, Sergeant, I'm exactly where I need to be." Martinez shrugged. "Your funeral, Chun. Don't come crying to me when you can't keep up." The assumption followed Sarah through every phase of basic training. When they learned to maintain weapons, instructors automatically assigned her to training groups with soldiers who needed extra help. When they practiced combat maneuvers, squad leaders consistently placed her in protected positions, assuming she couldn't handle direct confrontation scenarios. Sarah endured the condescension silently, focusing on exceeding every standard set before her. During the first weapons qualification, she fired expert scores with every weapon system they introduced. Her M16 qualification was perfect again. Drill sergeants began gathering around the firing line when Sarah shot, drawn by scores that shouldn't have been possible for a basic training recruit. "Chin's either a prodigy or she's been lying about her background," Sergeant Williams told his fellow instructors during their weekly assessment meeting. "Nobody shoots like that without serious training." They investigated Sarah's background thoroughly, looking for evidence of prior military service or professional shooting experience. They found hunting licenses, competition scores from high school ROTC, and testimonials from her assessment team, but nothing that explained her extraordinary marksmanship abilities. The breakthrough came during week 8, when basic training companies competed in inter-unit challenges designed to build teamwork and esprit de corps. The marksmanship competition included long-distance shooting events that pushed soldiers beyond their comfort zones. Sarah's company commander, Captain Jennifer Walsh, made a strategic decision that surprised everyone. "Chun, you're shooting anchor position for our distance team." Anchor position meant shooting last, when accumulated pressure was highest and margin for error was smallest. Traditionally reserved for the most experienced soldiers, anchor position could make or break a unit's performance. "Ma'am, are you sure?" Sergeant Williams questioned. "Chin's just a trainee. Maybe we should put Rodriguez in anchor. He's got hunting experience." Captain Walsh had been watching Sarah quietly for weeks, noting not just her shooting scores, but her consistency under pressure. During combat simulation exercises, while other recruits struggled with stress-induced accuracy problems, Sarah's performance remained constant. "Chin shoots anchor," Walsh decided. "That's final." The competition took place on Fort Benning's longest rifle range, with targets positioned at 400, 600, and 800 meters. 5 companies competed, each fielding their 4 best marksmen. Sarah was the only female shooter in the entire competition. As she prepared for her final round, 800-meter shots in late afternoon wind conditions, whispered conversations rippled through the spectator area. Officers from other companies openly questioned whether Sarah's presence indicated her unit's lack of depth rather than confidence in her abilities. Sarah settled into her firing position, adjusting her rifle's scope for distance and wind drift. Her breathing slowed to the rhythm her father had taught her years earlier. The world narrowed to nothing but crosshairs, target, and the space between heartbeats. Her first shot struck the 10 ring, just left of center. Wind adjustment. Second shot, center mass. Third shot, same hole as the second. Fourth shot, extending the group slightly right. Fifth shot, dead center again. When the targets were scored and results announced, Sarah's performance had won the competition for her company by a margin wider than the previous 3 years combined. More importantly, her 800-meter group measurement was smaller than groups fired by active-duty snipers attending the event as observers. Captain Walsh found Sarah after the awards ceremony, where the young recruit had accepted congratulations with characteristic quiet professionalism. "Chun, I'm recommending you for accelerated advancement to sniper school after infantry training," Walsh said. "With your demonstrated abilities, you could be leading marksman teams within 2 years." Sarah nodded respectfully. "Thank you, ma'am. I'd like that opportunity." What Captain Walsh didn't mention was the pushback she expected to encounter. Despite changing regulations that officially opened combat roles to women, practical implementation remained inconsistent. Sniper school, in particular, maintained cultural traditions that viewed female candidates with suspicion. That evening, Captain Walsh placed a call to Colonel Mitchell at the Pentagon, updating him on Sarah's progress. "Her scores are consistently exceptional," Walsh reported. "But I'm concerned about the reception she'll receive at advanced training facilities. Some of these programs haven't fully adapted to integrated combat units." Colonel Mitchell had been tracking Sarah's development through official channels. Her basic training performance confirmed everything Master Sergeant Torres had predicted. But he also understood Captain Walsh's concerns. "Continue with the sniper school recommendation," Mitchell directed. "If there are administrative challenges, they'll work their way up to my level eventually. This soldier's capabilities are too valuable to waste on bureaucratic prejudices." The final weeks of basic training passed quickly for Sarah. She graduated second in her class academically and first in all combat skills evaluations. During the graduation ceremony, as family members watched their soldiers receive completion certificates, Marcus Chin felt pride mixed with apprehension. His daughter was clearly excelling, but he could see the challenges ahead. After graduation, Sarah received 2 weeks of leave before reporting to Fort Moore for 1-station unit training, the infantry-specific instruction that would prepare her for combat operations. She spent most of her leave at home in Montana, helping her father with hunting season preparations and reacquainting herself with the mountains that had shaped her earliest memories. On her final evening home, father and daughter sat on their cabin's front porch, watching sunset paint the western peaks in shades of gold and crimson. "You know what's coming next will be harder than basic training," Marcus said quietly. Sarah nodded. "I know, Dad. But I also know what I can do with a rifle. Eventually, they'll have to acknowledge that." Marcus smiled at his daughter's confidence, but years of military experience had taught him that merit didn't always overcome institutional resistance. "Just remember," he said, "proving yourself isn't a one-time event. You'll have to do it again and again every time you encounter someone new. Don't let that discourage you. 3 days later, Sarah reported to Fort Moore, ready for the next phase of her military education. She had no way of knowing that her reputation had preceded her, or that conversations about her potential were already taking place in offices far above her current rank. More importantly, she had no idea that her upcoming performance in infantry training would attract attention from special operations units actively recruiting precision marksmen for classified missions. The quiet girl from Montana was about to become a very valuable commodity in America's ongoing military operations. The only question remaining was whether the system would recognize her value quickly enough to avoid wasting her extraordinary talents on bureaucratic resistance. Fort Moore's infantry training pushed soldiers beyond the basic military skills they had learned during initial entry. Here, recruits learned to think and fight as combat units, mastering everything from urban warfare tactics to advanced weapons systems. Sarah arrived expecting to prove herself once again, but she quickly discovered that her reputation had preceded her. First Sergeant Michael Harrison had reviewed Sarah's file before she arrived at his training company. Her basic training scores were impressive enough to catch attention. But what intrigued Harrison more were the informal reports from drill sergeants and officers who had worked with her. "Chen doesn't just shoot well," one evaluation noted. "She thinks like a marksman. She anticipates, adapts, and delivers results under pressure that would shake experienced soldiers." Harrison decided to test these claims immediately. On Sarah's second day at Fort Moore, he assigned her to advanced marksmanship training alongside soldiers who had already completed basic infantry courses. The other students had weeks of additional experience with military weapons systems and combat tactics. The training scenario involved moving targets, simulated combat stress, and weapons they had never used before. Sarah found herself partnered with Specialist Marcus Johnson, a soldier from Alabama who had grown up hunting and had earned expert badges with every weapon he had encountered. "No offense, John," Johnson said as they prepared for the exercise, "but I heard you're straight out of basic. This might be over your head." Sarah checked her unfamiliar weapon system methodically, understanding its mechanics intuitively despite never having fired this particular model. "I appreciate the warning, Specialist. I'll do my best to keep up." The exercise began with targets appearing at various distances and angles, forcing shooters to acquire, aim, and engage quickly while maintaining accuracy. Sarah's first shot dropped the target at 300 meters. Her second eliminated a pop-up target that appeared for only 3 seconds. Her third, fourth, and fifth shots continued the pattern of immediate target elimination. Specialist Johnson, meanwhile, was struggling with the unfamiliar weapon and the pressure of rapid engagement. He watched Sarah's performance with growing amazement, realizing that she was operating at a level he had never seen before. "Chun, where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked during a brief pause between target sequences. "Montana," Sarah replied simply, already scanning for the next target appearance. First Sergeant Harrison observed the exercise from the control tower, recording scores and noting tactical decision-making under pressure. Sarah's performance wasn't just accurate, it was efficient. She wasted no ammunition, made no hesitation shots, and maintained consistent results despite increasing difficulty levels. After the exercise, Harrison pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. "Chun, I've been training infantry soldiers for 15 years, he began. "Your shooting is exceptional, but what impresses me more is your tactical awareness. You're reading scenarios and making decisions like someone with years of combat experience." Sarah maintained respectful attention, but Harrison could see she was processing his words carefully. "I'm recommending you for accelerated advancement to specialized training programs," Harrison continued. "With your demonstrated abilities, you could be contributing to active combat units within months rather than years." That evening, Harrison contacted his former commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel David Santos, who now served as Director of Special Operations Recruitment. Santos had been seeking precision marksmen for deployment to Afghanistan, where American forces were engaged in complex mountain warfare operations. "Dave, I've got a soldier here who might interest your people," Harrison said during their phone conversation. "Female, exceptional marksmanship abilities, demonstrates tactical thinking beyond her experience level." Lieutenant Colonel Santos had heard similar reports before, usually resulting in disappointment when candidates couldn't perform under actual combat conditions. But Harrison's judgment had proven reliable over years of collaboration. "Send me her complete file and evaluation scores," Santos requested. "If she's as good as you say, we might have immediate opportunities." The following week brought advanced infantry training exercises designed to simulate actual combat conditions. Sarah's platoon was assigned urban warfare scenarios, where precise shooting became critical for avoiding civilian casualties while neutralizing legitimate threats. The exercise took place in a mock Afghan village constructed to replicate conditions soldiers encountered during deployment. Buildings, narrow streets, and civilian role players created complex tactical situations requiring split-second decision-making. Sarah's squad leader, Sergeant Robert Kim, positioned her as the designated marksman, responsible for providing precision fire support while other team members maneuvered through urban terrain. It was a role typically assigned to soldiers with significantly more training and experience. "Chun, your job is simple," Sergeant Kim explained. "Keep overwatch on our movement, and take out any threats that appear beyond effective range for our rifles. Think you can handle that?" Sarah nodded, settling into a firing position that provided visual coverage of the entire exercise area. Through her scope, she could track her squad's movement while simultaneously scanning for target appearances. The scenario began with Sarah's teammates moving through simulated streets toward an objective building. Target silhouettes appeared in windows, doorways, and rooftops, some representing legitimate threats, others representing civilians who should not be engaged. Sarah's first target appeared in a third-story window, 400 meters from her position. The silhouette held a weapon and aimed toward her advancing squadmates. One shot eliminated the threat before her teammates even realized they were being engaged. Her second engagement came 30 seconds later, a target on a rooftop attempting to flank her squad's advance. Again, one shot, immediate elimination. Throughout the 15-minute exercise, Sarah engaged 8 legitimate targets while allowing 6 civilian silhouettes to remain untouched. Her squad completed their objective without taking any simulated casualties, largely because threats were eliminated before they could become effective. After the exercise, Master Sergeant Patricia Williams, the urban warfare instructor, approached Sarah with evident curiosity. "Chun, how did you identify threats so quickly? Some of those targets were only visible for seconds before you engaged." Sarah considered the question carefully. "I watched their body language and weapon positioning, Sergeant. Legitimate threats move differently than civilians. They focus on my squad members rather than trying to avoid the situation." Master Sergeant Williams had been teaching urban warfare for 8 years, working with soldiers who had actual combat experience. Sarah's tactical observations demonstrated understanding that typically required months of deployment experience to develop. That evening, Williams added her own evaluation to Sarah's growing file of exceptional performance reports. But she also included a recommendation that would change Sarah's military trajectory entirely. "This soldier possesses intuitive tactical abilities that suggest she should be considered for immediate deployment with experienced combat units rather than continued training with conventional forces," Williams wrote. "Her marksmanship skills are beyond question, but her decision-making under pressure indicates potential for special operations assignments." Within 48 hours, Sarah received orders to report to Lieutenant Colonel Santos for evaluation and potential assignment to classified missions. She had been at Fort Moore for only 6 weeks, but her performance had attracted attention at levels far above normal training command structure. The night before her evaluation appointment, Sarah called her father from the base phone center. "Dad, I think something big is happening," she said quietly. "They're sending me for special assignments evaluation tomorrow." Marcus Chun felt pride and concern in equal measure. His daughter was clearly exceeding every expectation, but rapid advancement often brought challenges that young soldiers weren't prepared to handle. "Remember what I taught you," he said. "Steady breath, steady aim, steady heart. Whatever they ask you to do, you're ready for it." Sarah hung up the phone and returned to her barracks, where her fellow trainees were discussing their upcoming assignments to regular infantry units. None of them knew that Sarah was being considered for missions that would put her extraordinary skills to immediate use in active combat zones. Tomorrow would determine whether she continued along conventional military career paths or entered a world where her unique abilities could make immediate impact on critical operations. Either way, the quiet girl from Montana was about to discover just how valuable her mountain-taught skills had become to America's military objectives. Lieutenant Colonel Santos conducted his evaluation in a nondescript office building adjacent to Fort Moore's main training areas. Sarah arrived in dress uniform, carrying the comprehensive file that documented her extraordinary performance throughout military training. What she didn't know was that Santos had already made his decision based on reports from multiple instructors and commanding officers. Private Chun, I'm going to be direct with you, Santos began after reviewing her seated posture and professional bearing. We have immediate operational requirements for soldiers with your demonstrated capabilities. These assignments involve deployment to active combat zones where your marksmanship skills would be utilized in high-stakes situations. Sarah maintained eye contact, processing the implications of what Santos was describing. Sir, what kind of assignments? Precision fire support for special operations teams conducting counter-terrorism missions in Afghanistan, Santos explained. You would be working with experienced combat veterans in situations where accurate shooting can mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The opportunity Santos described represented everything Sarah had trained for, but it also meant bypassing traditional military progression entirely. Most soldiers required years of service before being considered for special operations support roles. Sir, I understand this is unusual advancement, Sarah said carefully. May I ask why I'm being considered despite limited experience? Santos appreciated her directness. Because your instructors believe you possess natural abilities that can't be taught through conventional training programs. Master Sergeant Williams wrote that you demonstrate tactical awareness, typically requiring months of combat deployment to develop. First Sergeant Harrison noted that you think like a marksman rather than just shoot like one. Sarah felt the weight of expectations and opportunity settling around her. What would be required of me, sir? Immediate deployment to Afghanistan as an embedded marksman with the 75th Ranger Regiment, Santos replied. You would provide precision fire support for missions targeting high-value individuals and time-sensitive operations. The work is dangerous, the conditions are harsh, and the pressure is unlike anything you've experienced in training. Sarah thought about her father's words about steady breath, steady aim, steady heart. This was the moment when all her mountain training and military preparation would be tested under actual combat conditions. Sir, I'd like that assignment. Santos nodded, having expected her response. There's one more thing, Chun. You'll be the first female soldier assigned to this particular role with Ranger units. Some team members may have concerns about working with someone without traditional special operations background. You'll need to prove yourself quickly. 2 weeks later, Sarah found herself on a military transport aircraft flying toward Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. Her personal equipment included a customized rifle system worth more than most people's cars, specialized optics designed for extreme range engagement, and gear configured specifically for mountain warfare operations. The soldier sitting next to her was Sergeant First Class Michael Torres, a veteran of 3 combat deployments who served as team leader for precision fire missions. Torres had reviewed Sarah's file, but remained skeptical about working with someone so inexperienced. Chun, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, Torres said as their aircraft crossed international airspace. Where we're going, mistakes get people killed. You might be a great shot on training ranges, but combat is different. There's incoming fire, civilian populations, weather conditions that change every hour. Sarah listened respectfully, understanding that Torres was expressing legitimate concerns rather than personal hostility. Sergeant Torres, I understand your position. I hope to prove myself worthy of the team's confidence. Torres studied Sarah's calm demeanor and professional response. Despite his reservations about her experience level, her instructor's reports had been consistently exceptional. Bagram Air Base represented Sarah's introduction to active military operations in a combat zone. The base buzzed with constant activity, helicopters launching for missions, supply convoys preparing for movement, and soldiers returning from operations with the 1,000-yard stare that came from sustained exposure to combat stress. Sarah's first assignment involved supporting a mission to eliminate a high-value target who had been coordinating attacks against coalition forces. Intelligence indicated the target would be meeting with subordinates in a compound located in mountain terrain that favored long-range engagement. Sergeant Torres briefed Sarah on the mission parameters during their pre-deployment preparation. The target building is 800 meters from our overwatch position, Torres explained, pointing to satellite photographs of the objective area. We expect multiple individuals in the compound, but only one is authorized for elimination. You'll need to identify the correct target and take the shot without endangering other occupants or our assault team. Sarah studied the photographs, noting terrain features, potential wind patterns, and sight lines that would affect her shot placement. Sergeant Torres, what's the expected timeline for target identification and engagement? Unknown, Torres replied. Could be minutes, could be hours. You'll need to maintain position and readiness until the target appears and can be positively identified. The mission launched before dawn, with Sarah's team inserted by helicopter into mountain positions overlooking the target compound. Sarah established her firing position among rocks that provided concealment while allowing clear visual access to the objective building. For 6 hours, Sarah maintained her position through her rifle scope, watching for movement that would indicate their target's arrival. The physical demands of remaining motionless for extended periods, while maintaining constant readiness for immediate action, tested endurance levels that training had only simulated. At 1,347 hours, vehicles appeared on the road approaching the compound. Through her scope, Sarah watched as multiple individuals exited the vehicles and entered the target building. Radio communications from intelligence assets confirmed that their primary target was among the arrivals. "Overwatch, this is command," came the voice through Sarah's earpiece. "Target is confirmed in the building. You are authorized to engage upon positive identification." Sarah adjusted her scope's focus and began the methodical process of identifying individuals moving through the compound. Her target was described as a male approximately 40 years old, wearing traditional Afghan clothing, with distinctive scarring on his left cheek from previous combat injuries. 20 minutes passed before Sarah identified a figure matching the target description. The individual appeared in a window on the building's second floor, speaking with other occupants while gesturing toward the surrounding terrain. "Command, I have eyes on potential target," Sarah reported quietly. "Male, approximate age, and clothing match description. Cannot confirm facial scarring from current angle. Overwatch, maintain observation. Target identification must be positive before engagement authorization." Sarah watched patiently as the figure moved between window positions, waiting for an angle that would allow definitive identification. Her breathing remained controlled, her heartbeat steady, despite understanding that other team members' safety depended on her precision. At 1,420 hours, the target moved to a window position that provided clear profile visualization. Through her scope's magnification, Sarah could see the distinctive scarring that confirmed target identity. "Command, I have positive target identification," Sarah reported. "Overwatch, you are cleared hot. Take the shot when ready." Sarah made final adjustments for wind and distance, her father's training combining with military instruction to create the perfect synthesis of technique and instinct. The world narrowed to crosshairs, target, and the space between heartbeats. Her shot struck the target center mass, instantly neutralizing the threat while leaving other compound occupants unharmed. The mission team completed their objectives without encountering resistance, largely because their primary opposition had been eliminated before they could coordinate defensive responses. During post-mission debriefing, Sergeant Torres approached Sarah with newfound respect evident in his expression. "Chun, that was a textbook engagement under difficult conditions," Torres said. "You maintained position for hours, made positive target identification under pressure, and delivered precise fire that protected the entire team." Sarah nodded professionally, but internally felt the satisfaction of proving herself under actual combat conditions. "Thank you, Sergeant Torres. I'm glad I could contribute to mission success." Over the following months, Sarah participated in 17 similar missions, each time demonstrating the exceptional abilities that had brought her to Afghanistan. Her reputation within special operations units grew from skeptical acceptance to active recognition as one of their most valuable assets. But her most challenging test was still coming. The moment when institutional prejudices would collide directly with undeniable evidence of her capabilities, forcing the military establishment to confront assumptions that had guided their thinking for generations.